Hello, this is Michael from League of Items, and today I'm going to create some rune pages. In this video, I use a spreadsheet to figure out roughly how much gold I think each rune is worth, and then I'm going to use those numbers to create the rune page. So if you want to know how I reached those numbers, watch the entire video and everything should be explained. Otherwise, you just have to go by what I say in the beginning portion of this video, which I'm using my conclusions that I came to. So let's get started with the precision tree. And I'm not going to go through the precision tree plus a secondary tree because the synergies work differently depending on the champion. That's really where the champion picking gets involved. I'm just really focused on the primary tree for starters. So our first decision to be made is between press the attack, lethal tempo, and fleet footwork. If we look at the spreadsheet, you'll see that lethal tempo provides the highest gold value. This is because of the attack speed. You get 80% attack speed. Now, in these calculations, I was unable to quantify the 40 to 180 damage, and I did not include the healing from fleet footwork. These have to do with game state. So, like, for press the attack, you need to get the 3 attacks, and then you get the 180 damage and the 12% exposed armor, or 12% exposed defensive stats. And then fleet footwork, you can get the heal. So the heal can help you in lane. But just for this, we're going with lethal tempo. I think lethal tempo has the highest ceiling out of these three in terms of reliability. Press the attack, as you know, is one of my favorite keystones just because I think in practice it's very strong. But from a theoretical perspective, with focusing on the gold, I think lethal tempo eventually will outscale that. Next up, we have Overheal, Triumph, and Presence of Mind. For Presence of Mind, I used Kassadin. So I'm kind of using a specific champion. And I think, for the most part, Overheal is the most proactive. If you need the shield for in lane, fine. But Triumph, once you get into team fights, is going to outscale that because it can happen multiple times in one fight. You can get it up to 5 times, and you're also going to get a little bit of gold for that. Presence of Mind is very champion-specific. There are champions where it will outvalue Triumph. Next up, we have Alacrity, Tenacity, and Bloodline. These are just easy calculations based on the stats they provide at level 18. I went with Alacrity. Then we have Coup de Gras, Cut Down, and Last Stand. This is one of the most difficult things to quantify because how much is 1% of damage increased? I have no idea. If you have some thoughts on that, please let me know. But I don't have any numbers for that really. So it comes down to which one of these is going to be the most useful in your game. So these are all situational. And I think that's going to be an unfavorable answer to most people because they want to know which one's the best all the time. But I don't have that for you. So Coup de Gras and Cut Down only deals damage to champions. Last Stand deals damage to everything. So it just increases your damage. It's not against champions only. So this will also work against Dragon, Baron, Towers. Does it work against Towers? I'm not sure if it works against Towers. It does work against minions. So I think there's an argument for Last Stand. I think Cut Down's better than Coup de Gras. So personally, I still think you have to make the decision in champ select depending on the enemy team. So that is the precision tree. Let's go to Domination. Domination, Electrocute, Predator, and Harvest. As I mentioned in the other part of the video, I do not understand Dark Harvest really. I completely admit that. I need to do more research on this, but for the purposes of this video, I think Predator provides the most value, more than Electrocute. Electrocute you can get off multiple times in one game, you can get off 2 Electrocutes in the time that you can get off 1 Predator for the most part, or up to 4. Let's try that again. At level 18, it's a 25-second cooldown. Predator is a 100-second cooldown, so you'll get off 4 Electrocutes and 1 Predator. But at level 18, team fights do not last 100 seconds. So unless you're like using Electrocute all over the map in a disjointed team fight or setting picks or something, I think I'd rather play around Predator. And Predator also gives a ton of value in terms of the movement speed, over 2,666 gold. So I think Predator is the best. Next up, we have Cheap Shot, Taste of Blood, and Sudden Impact. Taste of Blood and Cheap Shot are difficult to quantify. It's going to come down to what your champion can use. Sudden Impact, I think is probably the best. You're getting lethality and magic pen. That's just a lot of gold. So I think that most of the time it's going to come down to sudden impact versus cheap shot. They provide more power than a heal. So you can make your decision on that. I think sudden impact's a little bit better. So then next up we have Zombie Ward, Ghost Poro, and Eyeball Collection. Zombie Ward and Ghost Poro are both tools to help you play with the vision game and difficult to quantify. So I think Eyeball Collection is better because it's going to help you in more points of the game. Last but not least, we have Ravenous Hunter, Ingenious Hunter, and Relentless Hunter. I think the player base quickly found out Relentless Hunter is the best. It helps on most champions. If you're a jungler, you want that flat movement speed. That's 576 gold. Ravenous Hunter is 400. Ingenious Hunter is 250. One thing to mention, though, is that Ingenious Hunter can decrease the cooldown of Predator by like 40%, and that's crazy. So if you are using Predator, Ingenious Hunter becomes much better. But for this video, Relentless Hunter is a little better, just in terms of pure gold value. Next up, the Sorcery Tree. Summon Arrey and Arcane Comet, I was unable to quantify. Phase Rush is worth approximately 2,300 gold. The way that I came to this number is by converting the movement speed and slow resist into the items they're similar to. So the 25%, the 75% slow resist is equal to the swiftness boots. They give 25% slow resist, so you multiply that by 3. That's 240 times 3. And then you have the 40% movement speed. That's like 8 Ether Wisps. And that's a 2,300 gold value. So that's really good. A lot of champions do not use this, but I think more should. The damage that you get from Arcane Comet and Arrey, once I'm able to quantify those, I'll be able to compare it to Phase Rush better. But a lot of the time, this is going to come down to champion choice. For this, since I have a number for Phase Rush, I'm just going to pick Phase Rush. Next up, Nullifying Orb, Mana Flow Band, and Ultimate Hat. Nullifying Orb is just a shield, so I converted that to max health. It's 320. Mana Flow Band, I think that as long as Mana Flow Band gives you 500 mana restored, then you can do the 500 mana times 1.4. You get 700 gold. That's pretty good. Ultimate Hat, you have 15% ult CDR, so it's probably close. It's probably worth 10% CDR. For this, I did a little bit more than 10% CDR because it is only impacting your ultimate, but a lot of champions who want Ultimate Hat need their ultimate. It's kind of convoluted saying it like that, but it's the truth. So I think Mana Flow Band's probably the best. Next up, we have Transcendence, Celerity, and Absolute Focus. Transcendence will give you about 1,100 gold's worth of stats after the 30-minute mark, I think, because once you build enough CDR in your kit, you're going to get ability power or attack damage depending on which one you need. Celerity, I did a little experiment with Skarner where I went Skarner, Predator, Merc Treads with my W active and on Aspire, and that's only worth 735 gold. So even in that scenario where you have a bunch of things going for you, you're only going to get 735 gold, which is equal to 21 attack damage. Next up, Absolute Focus. Absolute Focus at the 30-minute mark is going to give you 24 attack damage. That's worth 35 ability power. That's not it. 24 attack damage, 35 gold each, 840 gold. So I think Transcendence has the highest ceiling, and it's also relatively easy to play around as long as you know that you need to build CDR items. Last up, Scorch, Waterwalking, Gathering Storm. For this, I went to the 30-minute mark. And at the 30-minute mark, Gathering Storm is the best. But one thing to mention is I'm pretty sure that Scorch is best in the beginning part of the game, or if you really need that little bonus damage. I can't see that being the case. Waterwalking is better than Gathering Storm from about the 10-minute mark to the 30-minute mark. And then Gathering Storm is the best once your game reaches the 30-minute mark. Next up, Grasp of the Undying, Aftershock, and Guardian. This tree made me angry when I was doing research on it. Aftershock is broken, and it's broken for the similar reasons that Sejuani is broken. Aftershock is easily the best because in this calculation right here at level 18, you get 120 bonus armor, 120 bonus magic resistance, and that's not including the damage that it deals. The defensive stats alone are worth 4,560 gold. Why would Riot do this? This just lets tanks be tanks for 2.5 seconds every 20 seconds. It's just mind-boggling. It makes no sense to me. This is a terrible thing for the game. Aftershock should not be a thing. That's all I got for you. Grasp of the Undying, I'm not sure how much health it normally gives you, but I cannot see it be more than 4,560 gold plus damage. Like that is very, very unlikely. And then we have Guardian. Guardian is good on some support champions because it helps your AD carry survive the lane. But it's not Aftershock. So we're going to move on. Next up, we have Demolish, Font of Life, and Bone Plating. Demolish, I'm not sure how to quantify turret damage. It is very useful in the game. I love Demolish. I think it's great. Font of Life benefits your allies, not yourself. So you kind of need to be a support or someone who's initiating a team fight. And at that point, is this really going to make a difference in a team fight? I don't think so. Next up, Bone Plating. This is effectively a 150 shield because it reduces damage 3 times. It reduces damage by 50 3 times, and just turn that into health. That's worth 390 gold. So just in terms of pure gold evaluation, since I don't have real numbers for these, Bone Plating. But Bone Plating, I think, might also just be really good. I like Demolish, though. I'm not going to lie. I still think Demolish is better, even after I did this analysis. Next up, the slot with 4 runes, because Riot doesn't like trying hard. Iron Skin is worth 5 bonus armor. That's 100 gold. Mirror Shell, 108 gold because of the magic resistance. Conditioning is easily better than both of those. It is not close. You just need to get to the 10-minute mark. So Conditioning is the best. Second Wind can help you survive the lane, but I'm pretty sure Conditioning is just the best. If someone has numbers justifying Second Wind over Conditioning, let me know. That would be kind of shocking to me. Last but not least, we have Overgrowth, Revitalize, and Unflinching. I think Overgrowth is the best in terms of the health that it's going to give you, because it's going to give you a lot of health. You're going to get hundreds of health. Revitalize is better when you're under 40% health, and it can help allies. From a pure gold evaluation standpoint, it's not the best, though. Unflinching is really cool. I would definitely check out that portion of the video. There are some interesting things about unflinching that most people probably don't know. Last up, the Inspiration Tree. Unsealed Spellbook, Glacial Augment, Kleptomancy. Kleptomancy... Okay, so the funny thing about the Inspiration Tree is that it's intentionally game-breaking. So the type of thinking that works in order to make Inspiration good does not lend itself to gold evaluation, really. But let's push through that. Unsealed Spellbook breaks the game, lets you have whatever summoner spells you want. You can change them throughout the game. That's very valuable, and it has a great utilitarian value, but that's not a gold value. The 15% summoner spell cooldown reduction is, but that's probably only worth 150 gold about. Glacial Augment. This is a slightly better Frozen Mallet. Frozen Mallet is worth around 200 gold. I think that Glacial Augment with something like Twin Shadows makes this better, but that requires synergy, so I'm valuing this around 200 because that's about what Frozen Mallet's worth. Kleptomancy is the best out of these three. As long as you use Kleptomancy efficiently and are continuously proccing that, then you're going to get the items that help you in lane. And I know that a lot of players use Kleptomancy and sell the items that they get, but I'm pretty sure that they just give you good enough spikes to justify using them in lane to try to fight for advantages. And I think that's ultimately better than hitting item spikes. I have not done any real testing on that, but that's my gut instinct. Next tier is Hextech, Flash Traption, Magical Footwear, Perfect Timing. Magical Footwear is probably the best. Hextech, Flash Traption, difficult to put a gold value on that. Perfect Timing, it's worth about 250 gold plus the CDR. If you think that CDR is worth 170 gold, then Perfect Timing is better than Magical Footwear. Most of the time I go perfect timing instead of magical footwear because I like buying boots earlier in the game. I think that you're giving up too much by going magical footwear. In terms of pure gold, it's worth it, but in practice, I don't think it's very practical. So you can really choose between these two. I also like the CDR for Zanya's and Guardian Angel. Next up, we have Futures Market, Minion Dematerializer, and Biscuit Delivery. Futures Market, difficult to put a value on it unless you know what item you're going to buy with it, because that makes it a lot better, but not every champion can use Futures Market correctly. Minion Dematerializer increases damage against minions. Difficult to quantify that. I think Minion Dematerializer will become more important because Banner of Command is apparently broken, and I think Minion Dematerializer will work on a Baron buffed minion with Banner of Command. So it'll be important to save one for the late game. Last up, Biscuit Delivery. You get 160 mana after you use all 4 biscuits. That's worth 224 gold. They also help you in lane. Biscuit Delivery is the best, I think. If you know, if Banner of Command becomes more popular, Minion Dematerializer will be very good. Last up, we have the CDR from Cosmic Insight, the bonus movement speed from Approach Velocity, and also bonus movement speed from Time Warp Tonic. So Cosmic Insight, I think, is worth about 300 gold. That's mostly a guess, just based on CDR values. Approach Velocity, the 10% movement speed, you can quantify that by Etherwisp times 2. It's only on allies with impaired movement or enemies you impair. So it comes down to champion kit on how effectively you can use this. Time Warp Tonic, very good on junglers. I think Hunter's Potion plus Time Warp Tonic is very good. The 5% movement speed is basically 100% uptime. So those are my rune pages based on gold efficiency alone. I think it makes sense. A lot of them are seen currently as good primary pages. The keystones that are the most used are basically the ones with the best values. Like I said, it's difficult to quantify the ones that do damage, but I'm sure they're similar to one another, and the reason that you would justify taking that regardless of the gold efficiency is because of how the champion uses it. So if you want to see how I reach those numbers and my thought processes behind the runes and a little bit extra information about the runes, stick around, watch the end of the video, and thanks for watching. So let's get started with the precision tree. First up, press the attack. You expose your target for 12% and you deal 40 to 180 damage. This is one of we're starting off with one that's difficult to quantify because the 12% exposed is kind of like having armor pen or magic pen. So what I did there is I took the armor pen and I multiplied that times the percentage that it gives, so that's 12. Because a lot of the time, I think that 100 armor or magic resistance is a good number to assume the enemy is going to have. At least one of your enemies is going to have. So that's why I chose that number. So that value alone is 375. Then you would need to quantify damage, and I haven't attempted to do that in the past. But one number that crossed my mind is 1 gold per damage, because if you look at some other items like Frozen Mallet, for example, no, that is a terrible example. Let's just go to what I was thinking of. Let's go to Luden's Echo. So Luden's Echo, in the gold efficiency, you have minus 109 gold. This means that the base stats that you derive from this item, the 90 ability power, 10% CDR, and 500 mana, is equal to 3,190. The cost of this item is 3,300. So how do you make up the rest of that value? And the one way that I've thought about this is that Echo needs to equal 110. So if you look at what it does, you do 100 damage, assuming you have no AP. So that's roughly 1 damage per point to bring it back to value. It's probably more than that because I'm sure Riot wants to give you some added value out of combining the item. So it's probably over 100, but just as a baseline, I think 100 is a good place to start. So maybe that number would go to 473, but I'm not comfortable throwing that number in yet. Let's go to Lethal Tempo. Lethal Tempo, best case scenario, level 18, 80% attack speed after attacking an enemy champion or something roughly like that. That's 80 because it's percent attack speed times 25. 25 is the value of percent attack speed right there. And that's equal to 2,000 gold. That's a lot of gold. Next up, Fleet Footwork. Fleet Footwork, you get the 30% bonus movement speed and a heal. For this, I've only included the bonus movement speed, which is equal to 6 Ether Wisps. So I took 197.5 multiplied by 6 and got 1,185. Next up, Overheal. Overheal is going to give you a shield for 10% of your max health, so it's just effective health, so I just made that simple conversion. This is the equation, is max health times 0.1, because it's one tenth of your total health, times 2.67, which is the value for 1 point of health, and I came out to about 665. So obviously the value of this is going to fluctuate depending on max health, so the gold value that I came to was 665, 12% missing health. In a best case scenario, your missing health is going to be 99%, so you're going to get close to 10% max health too. The difference between Overheal and Triumph is that Overheal is more proactive, like you can build up a shield and go into a fight. Triumph, you can use multiple times in one team fight, and it's hard to quantify. It's hard to quantify. I mean, this is the most fair way to quantify it, the way that I've done it here, which is, I would say it's close to the 665. It's very similar, but Triumph can happen multiple times in one team fight, and the number doesn't take that into consideration. Moving on, Presence of Mind. For Presence of Mind, I thought about one of the champions who uses it the best, which is Kassadin, and I looked at Kassadin's abilities and figured out what like a full combo would look like at level 18 with 2 ultimates. So that's about 1,700 mana. So if it restores 1,700 mana, then this is worth 2,380, which is really good. Obviously situational, depends on which champions you're going to play, but that's a big number. So the more value that you can get out of this, the better. And the other thing that a lot of players, including myself, haven't really taken into consideration is that whenever you level up, you can use all of your abilities and keep the mana, and that's pretty good. We most of the time when we see takedown in something, our eyes just lock onto takedown, and we only think about takedown scenarios. Next up, Alacrity. Alacrity is just 18% attack speed at max. That's a little over half of Berserker Greaves. So I took 18 times 25, which is 18% times the value of attack speed. That's 450 gold. It's a little less, but it feels really good on most champions that build it. Tenacity is essentially 2/3 of Merc Treads. So you have 110 divided by 3. 110, the way that I got this number is I went to the Merc Tread wiki page, looked at the gold efficiency. The tenacity needs to equal at least 110 for this item to make any sense. And I just assume that Riot does a decent job at that. So did that here. That's 100 gold. Bloodline, 8% lifesteal. That's similar to a Vamp Scepter. That's a little bit less than a Vamp Scepter. That's where I got this number. 375 is from 10% lifesteal times 0.8, which is the value we need, 300 gold. So if we're comparing these just based on gold value in this one tier, the attack speed gives you the most value, but a lot of the time this comes down to what you can use best on a certain champion. I'm not sure what that would look like if we reversed engineered it, which champion would use the attack speed the best, but that's something you can do. For the last tier, I think that these are all just relative. They are somewhat similar, but they're also quite different. So let's just go through each one of them. Coup de Gras. 7% increased damage to all champions. You also get the bonus attack damage. So in a best case scenario, you get the 9 attack damage. 9 times 35 equals 9 times 35. So at worst, it's 315 as long as you proc it once with the champion takedown. The conditions for the 3 of these make it somewhat difficult to compare them. So deal 7% increased damage to champions below 40% max health. In my opinion, that sounds like a win more thing. So like if you're ahead in a game and you're fighting an enemy and you can get them below the 40% health threshold, then Coup de Gras is going to do 7% more damage. But I like other ones more. That's just me. Cut down. Deal 4% bonus damage to champions with at least 150 more max health than you. This increases up to 10% bonus damage versus targets with 2,000 more max health than you. And in most games, you're going to be facing enemies that are like just in a bunch of different ranges. So here's a little graph that shows when the different values are reached. I haven't done much work with max health of enemies, but I think that if you're an 80 carry or a mid laner, you're going to have about 2,000 health. I'm going to just throw that number out there for fun, but I would say between 1,700 to 2,200. That's my assumed range. I think tanks can get to over 4,000 pretty easily, especially by level 18. So I think you're going to get the 10%. That means that against a tank, you're going to be doing 10% more damage all the time instead of 7% when they're below 40% health. So that's just better. It's strictly better. In the scenario that I just outlined, it's strictly better. Next up, Last Stand. One thing to mention is that Coup de Gras and Cut Down are both against champions. Last Stand is against everything. You just deal more damage to everything. And that's a lot of fun on champions like Karthus, Tryndamere, and Olaf, because you don't really feel the missing max health as much as other champions because you have the lifesteal, and the whole point of your champion is to deal a ton of damage. So those are specific situations where Last Stand is very, very good. Deal 5% increased damage while below 60% max health. This increases based on your missing health up to 11% increased damage. So the ceiling of Last Stand is better than Coup de Gras and Cut Down. It's just better. It's difficult to play around, but if you can play around it, it's better. And as I mentioned, Karthus, when he dies, his quote-unquote health is 0. So you will deal 11% increased damage with your ultimate once you die. That is pretty good. Let's move on to the Domination tree. So again, we run into the issue of quantifying damage. Obviously the scales, Electrocute, one of everybody's favorites. It's an early snowballer kind of thing. The damage can be okay in the late game, but we'll compare this later. I don't have a gold value for it yet. Predator. This one shocked me when I did this initially. So obviously the Predator goes onto your boots. You can get this at level 1. So you just click the button that your boots are on. You get 67.5% bonus movement speed for 1.5 seconds. During that time, the bonus move speed alone is worth 2,666 gold. That is crazy. It's reduced to 45% afterwards, but I'm still thinking about this number over here, 2,666. That's crazy, and that's not even taking into consideration the damage. So let's just do Electrocute versus Predator real quick. So at level 18, we have a 25-second cooldown. Predator is 100 seconds, so you can get off 4 Electrocute procs in the time that you can get off 1 Predator. But in the late game, are you going to get 2 Electrocutes off in one team fight? Doesn't happen often, I don't think. I think team fights generally last a little bit less than 25 seconds. Or at least they're decided before the 25-second mark. So then we just look at the damage. So it's 60 to 180. At level 1, Predator is better. Just in terms of the damage that it's going to output once, not the sustained damage. That really surprised me. I haven't looked at the numbers that closely before. So I think that Predator is even better than I thought it was. And, I mean, right now, champions like Skarner use it. And, yeah, it was just very surprising. So next up, Dark Harvest. Dark Harvest is more similar to Electrocute. Not sure how to quantify it. There's no cooldown. So there's that. There's no cooldown on Dark Harvest. The ceiling of this is very high. Some people have done some theory crafting around it. I personally haven't. If you want to go check that out on someone else's YouTube channel, I would recommend that very highly, just so that you understand how Dark Harvest works better, because I haven't done anything with it yet. Cheap Shot, another damage thing. It's 12 to 30 bonus true damage. I don't have a value for it. Taste of Blood is 18 to 35 with a ratio, and that's just a heal. Every time you deal damage to, not every time, damaging an enemy champion will heal you. That's a 20-second cooldown. I'm not sure what champions use this. I haven't used it specifically, and I don't think that it's as good as the other two, so I would stay away from it. Sudden Impact is a very good rune because it gives you the 10 lethality or magic pen every time you use a dash, blink, teleport, leave invisibility, or camouflage. And it's only a 4-second cooldown once the effect expires, which is pretty great. So for this calculation, I just did the 10 lethality. The number for lethality is usually 20, but I just made a video. I'm not sure if it's going to be released by the time I release this one, but I'm pretty sure that the real value of lethality is closer to 40, just because you get 20 and you're taking away 20 from the enemy team. And it also satisfies a lot of the lethality items to break even. So in the gold evaluation, I'll just show you right now. If we go to Duskblade of Drakthar, in the calculation here, we're at minus 300, and that's with lethality equaling, I think it was 20 or 25. So what I did, after looking at this number, I just thought to myself, how do we get this to 100%? And the only thing I had to do was take 1,925 plus this, and I did 18 equals 18 times 40. So then you get 720, and that completely erases the deficit. And I think that's a good way to look at it, because you are taking 20 armor away from somewhere else, or at least bypassing it. You're bypassing it, not taking it away. Next up, we're in the vision part of this. So this is tracking. Zombie Ward gives you vision. If you wanted to figure out vision, you would have to compare it apples to apples against Ghost Poro. I think that Zombie Ward is just better, especially in a team environment. I haven't been able to use a Ghost Poro really efficiently, ever. Next up, Eyeball Collection. Best case scenario, it's 18 AD or 30 AP. So what I did is I took attack damage times 35, that's 650. Ravenous Hunter, 15% spell vamp, that's just what it is. That's 400. Ingenious Hunter, this one is very cool. I completely missed this every time I've looked at the rune tree. Reduces the cooldown of item actives by 10%, plus 6% per bounty hunter stack. This gets up to 40%. So think about your Predator. Think about Ingenious Hunter, Predator, smash them together. You take off 40% of that cooldown. So instead of it being 100 seconds, now it's only 60 seconds. And that means that it's equal to 2 electrocutes is equal to 1 Predator at that point. And then that's when you start seeing the value of Predator getting higher and higher. But at that point in the game, I think Dark Harvest outscales both of those. But Predator, there's so much utility in that active. I think it's great to have something like Ingenious Hunter where you can increase it by 40% or decrease the cooldown by 40%. This also works with trinkets, so your sweepers, your wards, your warding trinket only, actually. And then also with Zanya's, let's just go to it. Zanya's, Wooglets, Gargoyle, Stoneplate. It also works. Yeah, those are the only ones. One thing that I think is interesting is Ingenious Hunter with perfect timing, because you'd be getting your Zanyas down significantly. It'd be 15%, 40%, so it's 55%. That's a lot of Zanyas. It's a lot of Hourglasses. Next up, Relentless Hunter. This is a very popular one, especially on junglers. It's essentially 48 flat move speed. Once you stack everything up, that's 576 gold. That is pretty good. Next up, we're in the sorcery tree. Summon Arrey. Arrey flies around a lot. She does some damage. This is another damage thing. I don't have a value for it yet. Arcane Comet. Another damage thing. I don't have a value for it yet. Phase Rush. It's equal to 40% movement speed, up to 40% bonus movement speed, and 75% slow resist for 3 seconds. So what I did is I took Swiftness Boots and Ether Wisp, and I just multiplied those values, because that's essentially what you're doing here. So the 40% movement speed is equal to 8 Ether Wisps, which is 197.5 times 8. The slow resist is 3 Swiftness Boots, because you get the 25% from Swiftness, Did that 3 times. 2300. Nullifying Orb is a shield. I guess I could have done that, treated that like max health. So let's just do that real quick. Max health 2.67. So 120 equals 120 times 2.67. So it's at least 320. It's more than that because you get the increased amount from AP or AD. Mana Flow Band, I had a real tough time with. I have no idea how to quantify something like this. I know that right down here it says it's equal to 0.53% missing mana every 5 seconds. Still don't know how to do that. I have no idea. If someone knows how to do that, let me know. Another way to look at it is by taking the value that it actually gives you in the game, because the game tracks that for you. So once you get to like 500 mana, it'd be 500 times 1.4. So that's 700 gold. That's pretty good. The real value of this is helping you in your laning phase. Maybe it's better on champions that use energy, but I don't really play any energy champions, so I'm not sure how that would work. I don't know how it feels. Ultimate Hat. Up to 15% ultimate CDR. I was pretty generous in this calculation. I just took the 10% CDR, added a little bit extra, because you are only getting ultimate. You are only getting the CDR reduced for your ultimate, but on a lot of champions, the CDR on the ultimate is the most important thing, like someone like Malzahar. So I kind of just middled it. Transcendence, 10% CDR, plus AP or AD. So for this one, I took 24 attack damage, multiply that by 35, and then I added the 10% CDR, because once you surpass this threshold, if you're going to take Transcendence, you should do it with the intention of exceeding the CDR cap, because this way you're going to get additional attack damage. And one build that I've done that this works on is like with Jace. If you go Transcendence with, it's kind of a troll build, Essence Reaver, Phantom Dancer, Black Cleaver, Muramana, Lucidity Boots, Transcendence, and then I get Cosmic Insight from the Inspiration Tree. It's actually pretty good. I've won games. I've carried games with it. You do a ton of damage. It's just different, and you have to learn how to play around it. Stop judging me. Okay, let's move on. Celerity. So Celerity, I wasn't sure how to do this at first because I wasn't sure how much attack damage it was going to give, but I went into a game with Skarner. I had Predator, Merc Treads, and I captured a Spire and turned on my W. And that seems like a pretty doable situation in most games, especially on Skarner. And I got 21 attack damage. So I took 21 attack damage and multiplied by 35, and we get 735. Pretty good. Absolute Focus. When you're above 70% health, you get 24 AD or 40 AP. And 24 AD times 35 is 840. Next up, Scorch, another damage thing. I don't have a value for it, but at the end of this video, we're going to try to do that, so just stick around. Waterwalking. Waterwalking is surprisingly good, and I think that it's important to compare it to Gathering Storm because Gathering Storm is very good. Scorch is the best in the early game because you're getting the extra damage. That's kind of a bold statement, I guess, but I think that's how most players look at it, at least. The move speed is nice on like something like a support or potentially a jungler if you want to get around the map faster. But if we're thinking about this as Waterwalking at level 18, then you're getting the 18 attack damage and 25 bonus movement speed. So you take 18 times 35, which is the value of attack damage, plus 300 because you get 25 bonus movement speed, which is equal to Boots of Speed. So that's 300, that's 930. So with Waterwalking and Gathering Storm, the way that I look at it is if we're going to treat Waterwalking as a level 18 kind of thing, then we also need to treat Gathering Storm as a level 18 thing. And that happens around the 30-minute mark. So at 30 minutes, you get 29 attack damage, so 29 times 35 is equal to 1015. This is the point when Gathering Storm starts to outscale Waterwalking, because up until this point in the game, it's Waterwalking is just better. From the 20 to 30 minute mark, it's just better, strictly better. It's probably better from the, I would say, for this tier, I would say Scorch is probably better for the first 10 minutes, then it's Waterwalking for the next 20, and then it's Gathering Storm for the rest of the game. So at level 18, you do 18 versus 29. Obviously, 29 is better. So 18 times 35 is 930. 29 times 35 is 1015. And then you also get the 300 bonus movement speed still. So that's an interesting one. It depends on how long your average game is. And this is different for solo queue and for ranked team play. So keep that in mind when you're making your decision between those. Next up, we're in the Resolve tree. Grasp of the Undying. Grasp of the Undying is a really tough one. There's the damage aspect and also the health increased aspect. I don't play enough with Grasp of the Undying to have numbers to work off of. Next up, Aftershock. Aftershock is completely broken. It's a Sejuani situation. At level 1, you get 70 bonus MR and armor. That's just ridiculous. But for this video, we're doing level 18. It's even better. So 120 armor and bonus MR is equal to 4,560 gold. That is ridiculous. It's on a 20-second cooldown, fine. But that alone is too good. And you also get damage. If this wasn't enough, you get damage on a 20-second cooldown. Aftershock is ridiculously broken. It's probably the best keystone in the game right now, and Riot needs to do something about it. This completely explains why tanks are so much better than everyone else right now. Just think about how many tanks you have to face in all your games with Aftershock, and then you can look at this and thank Riot. Next up, Guardian. 20% movement speed, and you also get a shield. The shield is equal to bonus health. I focused on the bonus movement speed here, which is 4 Ether Wisps. The shield, I guess you could do 150 times, what's the number? 150 times 2.6. Or wait, did I already include that? No, okay. So 390 equals 790 plus 390. So yeah, 1,180, that's pretty good. But Aftershock, even at level 1, is significantly better. The difference is that Aftershock helps you. Guardian also helps someone else. So next up, Demolish. I don't know how to quantify tower damage. Font of Life, small heal to allies. It only benefits allies. Not sure how to quantify that. Bone Plating, 150 shield. So if that's effective health, then you do 150 times 1.6. So if we treat this as health, then it's 150 health would be 390. This does help mitigate a lot of damage throughout the game, especially in lane. It's a 45-second cooldown, but it can save you in the early game. I think it's pretty good. Resolve is a lot of stopping the enemy from doing damage, and Bone Plating does that better than Demolish or Font of Life. Next up, we get the 5 bonus MR. 5 MR is equal to 100. 6 bonus MR is equal to 108. Conditioning, you get a little bit of both. Not a little bit. You get more of both. So that's 300 gold. One thing to mention is that Iron Skin, Mirror Shell, they both give you 5% armor or MR while the potion is active. The thing about conditioning is you get this for both static the rest of the game after the 10-minute mark. So this is a situation where you need to take conditioning, because as long as you, even if you're losing in the early game because you don't have the little bit of MR or armor from Iron Skin or Mirror Shell, conditioning is going to surpass those in value significantly. Just take conditioning, trust me, you'll thank me later. Sometimes you will need to take Second Wind, but I think that's mostly for people in lane. Like specifically junglers, you should be taking conditioning. If you're playing a jungler that needs to go resolve, that needs armor for the early clear, then you're doing something wrong. Second Wind is a heal. I'm not sure how to quantify healing. So we just got to skip that as per usual. Overgrowth, the way to quantify this would be to take the amount of health that you get from overgrowth and multiply that by 2.67. I think I saw a number that said like 500 is a decent amount that you can expect to get. So I'll just throw that in here. I don't know any better, but 1,335 is a lot. So there you go. Revitalize. 5% heal and shield amp is equal to 175. I'm pretty sure I just took that number off of an item. It does a couple more things. It also gives you incoming healing, shielding, self-healing, and self-shielding are increased by 10% while you're below 40% health. So that's a conditional thing. I like things that I can play around more easily. Unflinching is actually very interesting. So you have a maximum of 15% slow resist and 32% tenacity. I think this is specifically good on junglers. You just take the slow resist value, tenacity value, multiply it. I got to about 259. And that's the resolve tree. Next up, we're in inspiration, and inspiration was surprising to do this for. And I think it's a good thing that it's surprising because the gold values are quite low, but it's very popular because of how good inspiration feels in general. Like you have these game-breaking mechanics, and everybody likes breaking the game. So again, it just shows the limits of this kind of analysis. So 15% summoner spell cooldown reduction. I put 150 gold value on that. Glacial Augment is a slightly better Frozen Mallet, so I took the amount of gold that I would take for Frozen Mallet to reach item efficiency. That's 200. Maybe it's worth more. One thing this made me think about is Twin Shadows plus Glacial Augment. I think that's a good combination. And now that Twin Shadows is back, you're going to see more champions building Twin Shadows with Glacial Augment. Kleptomancy. This is one of the Keystones that was super broken. They scaled it down a lot because it was just producing way too much gold value. But I think I'm being pretty conservative by assigning a 700 gold value because you can proc it as much as you want. If you're very good at proccing Kleptomancy, then it's going to be over 700. But some players are just terrible at using it, and it's not going to reach even 700. It is kind of champion specific as well, so you need to make sure that you know that your champion can use Kleptomancy well. Hextech Flash Traption, you get a channeled flash. I don't know how to quantify that. Magical Footwear. At the 10-minute mark, you get slightly magical boots for free and 10 bonus movement speed. So I took the value of boots, which is 300. I took the value of 10 bonus movement speed, added them together, 420. Maybe blaze it. I don't know. Perfect timing. You get a stopwatch at 10 minutes. The stopwatch itself is worth 600 gold. So, I mean, I guess I could be more generous with this. So it's 600. If you wanted... Oh, wait, it's not 600. Wait, it is. No, it is 600. So it's 600 because you get to use it at the 10-minute mark. Then when you want to turn it into something else, it's worth 250. So you give back 350 gold of the value that you received from it. So it's equal to about 250. Probably more than 250. You see how it's complicated. At least I'm not crazy. Futures market. I love futures market. A lot of people seem to hate futures market. I've made a video on futures market. I think it's really good, depending on what you can buy. Some champions use it very well because there's a specific item that they need. Other champions don't get much value out of it. Minion Dematerializer, you deal increased damage to minions, so it's damage amplification against minions. In most of the time, you want to do it so it's 5-5-5, 5% against casters, melees, and siege minions. One thing that I would mention is that Minion Dematerializer, you can use it against super minions, and you can also use it against Banner of Command minions, I think. So I'd have to try that to be certain. But I was watching a video, and I was watching the dive, and they were saying that Banner of Command might become really popular, and I'd be happy because I love Banner of Command. You've seen one of my videos about Banner of Command, and if you can use it against a Banner of Command minion, it's going to be important to keep one charge of Minion Dematerializer on your team for the Banner of Command minion, because they could just end the game, and you need to not let them do that. Biscuit Delivery, it helps you a lot in lane, and then it gives you 160 mana. So I just took the 160 mana times 1.4, that's 224. Cosmic Insight, you get a bunch of CDR, 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 and CDR. I threw a 300 gold value on that. Approach Velocity, when it's active, is worth 197.5 gold times 2 because you get 20% bonus move, 10% bonus movement speed. Time Warp Tonic is overlooked right now. I think it's really good, especially on junglers that can use Hunter's Potion. And that's worth 5% bonus movement speed, 200 gold, roughly 197.5 if you want to be a stickler. And then your potions also last 20% longer, so it's probably over 200